Morning Talk on SAFM.
26 minutes to 11, and Dineo Molomo is here. She's our resident property expert, and any property issues you might have, you can call us on 08 9110 207, SMSs to 34701. And as we promised last week, what we're doing is focusing on, of course, the new Municipal Property Rates Act, but also the supplementary valuation role as well, and this time focusing on Durban, the eThekwini Municipality. So if you have any questions on that one, you can call us on those numbers. Joining me now, as well as Dineo, of course, Ben Esbach. You'll remember him from last week's Valuations Director at Rates Watch. And Keith Matthias is Head of Real Estate at the eThekwini Municipality. And he'll, of course, give us some insight on the municipality role in this regard and answer some of those questions for us this morning. So, Dineo, important, of course, to talk about this. And we did say that we would focus on the big cities, and today the eThekwini Municipality.
Yes, specifically eThekwini today, because they're also open, as well as, or at least Johannesburg is, and they've been open for a little while, longer than Johannesburg has been. Started in February. I know Keith is going to give us some facts in terms of when it's going to be closing. I'm quite excited to have participation at last from the municipality of eThekwini. We've been trying for quite a while, but just to get the outlook in terms of what the challenges have been, to get some information about how people can get into contact and to be able to ask questions. And I just need to advise that for today, we're not going to be able to deal with specific and one-on-one, cases or complaints per se, but we will be able to receive them on email, and we'll be addressing it directly with the municipality of eThekwini, because Keith has given us the commitment that they would try their level best to be able to try and help us. They won't be able to answer any questions that are specific because the database is quite large, and to deal with just one at a time, it can get quite tedious. But we can deal with general stories if people want to ask questions about the evaluations from the time that they opened in 2008. This is the second time around that it's coming through, and yeah, look, it's getting a little bit better in terms of our discussion. Obviously, there are some challenges that they have experienced, but it all has to do with the participation of the public in terms of how it is that they understand the valuations and how it works, and how they are able to work with the municipality as well.
Well, let me bring Keith Matthias then into this conversation. Keith, good morning to you.
Good morning, dear, and good morning to the listeners.
Well, of course, Dineo mentioning that the first all started in 2008. What has been the experience of the municipality when it comes to valuations?
I think 2008, when we launched in February, was really a difficult time for both our residents and for the municipality. We need to remember that at that point in time, we were valuing off of a replacement cost basis, and those rolls were some 9 years old. We were then shifting a roll onto a market base and bringing them up to date with the valuation date of the 1st of July 2007. That meant that the rates incident shift was going to affect people, and I guess there was a lot of concern which reflected through on the objections as to what people were going to land up paying in terms of their rates obligations to the City Council. Secondly, we were also launching, and this applied to most of South African cities, into a falling economy. And as the months went by, so the value that was reflected in the roll was moving further away from what could be achieved in the marketplace, particularly with regards to certain residential properties. Subsequent to that, I think we've seen the recovery of the market to differing degrees, but more of an acceptance of the basis of valuation, certainty in terms of rates, and the council's also committed to correcting errors in the rolls.
Okay, and have you had many objections? Have you had to go back quite a number of times at all?
The 2008 valuation roll, eThekwini received some 55,000 objections to, and the 2012 roll that we launched in February this year, we've received 10,500 objections to.
Okay, and what would you attribute the drop to?
I think, as I've said earlier, there's more certainty in terms of knowledge. I think the public are now far more aware of the basis of valuation and what that means for them compared to previously. I think also the ensuing 4 years have given municipalities an opportunity to learn from the experiences that they've gone through, and probably enhance their processes.
Let me bring Ben Esbach into this conversation. Ben, do you think that reflects what's happening in other cities as well?
Morning, Siki. Yes, hopefully every time you do a new role, you will purify or enhance your data, because data is the basis of your valuation system. And if you can enhance the data, obviously the quality will increase, and you will have fewer objections.
And do you think that's what's happened between 2008 and now?
Well, I think if you just have a look at the decrease in the number of objections, obviously that can be sort of the sign that the quality of the values are better. The other thing is that often we find that properties are undervalued, and therefore there will not be cause for objection.
Yeah.
That may also be a reason for the drop in objections, but I can't tell in this case, because you have to analyze the data to come up with a scientific answer.
Well, Ben, one of the things that Keith talked about was the awareness among residents, firstly of the procedure and how it's done, and also about the impact on their rates obligations. Would you agree that people are getting involved, that residents are more aware now?
I believe so, because every time, well, it was new for all of us in 2008 when they introduced their first role.
Yeah.
And I think what Keith said, the fact that they were coming from a replacement cost base, which is totally different from the market value concept, and that in itself was a big shift, and people were sort of scared that they were not used to these high values. Now they were sitting in 2008 with these high values, and that may have been the reason for a number of objections, which if at the end of the day, and maybe Keith can have the statistics to see how many values they have actually reduced due to the objections, because that's a good test. The number of objections on its own, it's not a good test, because there may be frivolous objections.
Okay. And Keith, would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. Just to touch on the objections and the changes, of those 55,000 objections, not all landed up with a reduction. In some cases, the value was reflected low, and we raised the value. So an objection doesn't necessarily mean that there would be a reduction in value, but a review of that value for its accuracy.
And last week, just talking, one of the things that was mentioned by Ben around the database, and you'd made a suggestion that municipalities should work with estate agents.
Absolutely. The other thing that I'm just thinking of, just on this last point that has been made by both the gentlemen, is how the economy also fell during at least within the first roll that it was taken out in 2008. I know for a fact that a lot of estate agents also were grappling with information in terms of the value of what the properties are worth, as in comparison to the good times of the property market. And I can only imagine with the municipality as well as the figures that they were sitting with, how daunting that could have been, because there was no sheet or data or information to say, okay, because the economy has gone this direction, these are the numbers that we should be following suit to. So I'm sure the argument could go back and forth between the individuals themselves as well as the council. But to Keith's point, obviously some of them had gone were valued even lower and had to be risen a little bit more. But what I also want to know is with some of the challenges, or at least the objections that have been raised, how has the council dealt with it? How have they either refunded the individuals, or are they still in process of that? Is there anything that they should be advising the public at this point in terms of dealing with each case? Is there a contact number that they'd like to share with us? Keith?
The objections to the 2008 roll have been completed, and the appeals that emanated from those objections, remember there's a two-level challenge that a property owner or an interested person has against an entry in the roll. The first being an objection, and if someone is dissatisfied with that outcome, they can then take it onto the appeals board. We had a bit of an hiatus in eThekwini's case where the appeals board wasn't in place when we had concluded objection outcomes. What we then did was we reviewed all of those outcomes through a second objection review, so that we ensured that people weren't prejudiced as a result of not being able to get into an appeals board. The appeals boards were set up, however, by the province, and in our case, the appeals board has been meeting virtually on a weekly basis. Currently, in terms of the 11 supplementary rolls that we published, they are concluding the hearing of appeals on the last 3. So we've concluded appeals through the 2008 general valuation and through to the 7th supplementary roll of that general valuation.
So right now, for the current roll, the current round, when did it open, and where can people see the notices? Have notices been sent out to residents?
We've got 2 elements that have happened this year. The first one being the launch of the 2012 general valuation. That was publicly released on the 10th of February this year, with the close of objections being on the 30th of March. We've launched the first supplementary roll to that general valuation, and objections to that are currently open. They will close on the last day of this month, the working day being the 29th of June.
Okay. Thank
The
you.
third element, which I do need to perhaps draw attention to, is the fact that we have 2 supplementary rolls currently open. Now, if I unpack that for listeners, if a property had a value or category change occurring from the close-off of work that we were doing on the general valuation 2012 to its publication, it would not have appeared in that particular general valuation publication.
Okay.
So we are publishing for any backdating of change in the 12th supplementary roll to the 2008 general valuation, and then continuing with any changes post that date with the first supplementary roll of the 2012 general valuation. And no, it sounds a little bit complex.
Yes, it
does.
I have no idea what you just said.
It does.
But effectively what is occurring is, if there's a crossover of change between the 2 valuation rolls, you need 2 supplementary valuations published to be able to reflect that.
Right.
Do you
Okay.
get,
A little bit, I do.
I have no
Maybe,
idea what you just
speaking?
said. Yes, please.
Maybe I can give an example
Yes,
to try
please do.
and demystify this. Remember, the general valuation roll had to be submitted by the end of January 2012. So in order to do that, you have to have a cutoff date, and I'm not sure what the cutoff date is, but let's take the 1st of November as the cutoff date. So for instance, if your building was under construction during that period, and you only completed it on the 1st of February this year, surely they couldn't include the new value in the general valuation roll. So that's why they're bringing out two supplementaries. One to update the old roll, because in that roll your property is still valued as unimproved, and they also need to update the new roll. So people just need to watch out to see, because if it's in the one, it should be in the second valuation roll as well.
Right.
Okay. Now
I think that's the important part.
Yes.
If it is in the one, it should also be on the second one. Right.
All right. So where do people check? You've said that obviously the supplementary valuation roll is the objections are open at the moment. Keith?
Correct. They are viewable probably most readily off of our website, which is at www.durban.gov.za, and one will find a link under our tools to the valuation roll. By searching on that valuation roll, if it doesn't give a return, it means that there isn't a record for the supplementary. But a return will then reflect the property. From that property reflection, one can also download a copy of the notice that was posted to the property owner, and one can also download a objection form that then pre-populates with the key data or the key attributes of that property.
Okay. Is there a number at all, just in case people don't have access to the internet?
Yes, they're welcome to phone my office on 031 311 4300. They can contact any one of Council's regional centres. Those centres also have copies of the supplementary rolls and would be able to assist with the download and completion of an objection form. Alternatively, as a third alternative, folk would be able to visit our offices on the 13th floor of 75 Dr. Langadubi Street in Durban, and my staff would be more than happy to assist them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Keith, for your time this morning.
Thank you, and thank you for bearing up.
It's a pleasure. That's Keith Matthias, who's head of real estate in the eThekwini Municipality. We're going to continue with Dineo and continue with Ben Esbach in a moment.
Morning Talk on SAFM.
And it's 7 minutes to 11 here on SAFM 104 to 107 in conversation with Dineo Molomo. She's with Dineo Properties and can answer any of your property related questions. We also have with us on the line Ben Esbach, who's valuations director with Rates Watch. Ben, just wanted to get some perspective from you on some of the issues raised by Keith Matthias. I suppose now we have an insight into what the municipalities have to go through, particularly with this type of thing.
Yes, Siki, it is really a huge task. If you think of dealing with 55,000 objections, just the administration, it's really it's enormous, and to not to lose an objection form or to misfile it or to get some of the papers lost, it's really a challenge. So if they succeed in working through that and attending to everything, that's excellent to deal with that. And then the valuer also has to apply his mind, look at the information that's supplied to review his valuation. He's not always the most popular man because not always sometimes, as Keith has indicated, he may also increase the value. So he's not always the popular man in town.
I can only imagine. But also it's important then that people get with this process as soon as possible so that you make it also easier for the municipality to do their job.
Absolutely. I think he even Keith, when I spoke to him a bit earlier, he made a mention of the municipality making quite a lot of improvements within their administration, and he was talking exactly to what Ben is alluding to, that it's the paperwork itself which is scanned and processed through electronically that they have to keep a watch of, and in no time they're hoping that they're going to improve their systems to an extent that it will all be electronic and can be viewed quite easily and quickly, especially when people are making their inquiries. But hopefully, I mean, all municipalities must just be going through the same kind of headaches during this whole process. But the most important part being the participation of the public, to being able to asking the right questions. But I urge municipalities as well to cooperate and remember that not all public individuals have access, number one, to telephones. Not all public have access to even internet. So, them being able to communicate with them by the time they land at their offices physically is another very important factor, that they can be, accommodated and listened to and made to understand. If some of the information can even be difficult for us to understand, I can only imagine for some people. Yeah,
and that face-to-face interaction is so important. Ben, what would you say the benefits of this process are for homeowners?
Well, by continuously improving data and the quality of the valuations, it raises the values, which in turn will lower the tariff per category of that, and the bottom line will be, if all properties are valued at a market-related level, it may mean that the rates will come down because everybody is paying his fair share. But if you have properties that's undervalued and overvalued, if you have that situation, the person with the overvalued property is obviously paying too much, and the person with the undervalued property is paying too little. So it's in everybody's interest that the quality of valuations must increase or must improve. And you only do this through time. Over time, if you enhance your data. I think data is key to this. It's like property, where we talk location. In the quality of values, data is very important.
And what was the biggest difference, do you think, that came from moving from the replacement cost basis to a market value basis?
Well, on the market value, you have benchmarks, because you test the value against what's happening in the market, what comparable properties are being sold for. So going the replacement costs, it's a minefield. Something that I personally don't like to use because of all the problems, and you often tend to overvalue a property if you use that method. But by going to the market as a basis, you have the market as a benchmark that you can measure.
All right. We'll leave it there. Thanks, Ben. Did you have any questions for me?
I was just thinking, perhaps maybe next time he can share with us some examples, one or two, about some clients that he's come across with the objections in eThekwini or even Johannesburg. But I'm sure we'll have more time with that at another time.
Yeah. All right. We'll have to leave it there. Thanks, Ben, again for your time this morning. That's Ben Esbach, who's Valuations Director with Rates Watch. And just to remind you, if you do live in the eThekwini Municipality and you want to just have a look at the supplementary role, as you heard from Keith Matthias, the objections are still open until the 29th of June. That's the last working day of this month. So do go onto that website, www.durban.gov.za, durban.gov.za, or you can call their offices on 031 311 4300. That's 031 311 4300, or you could just step into their offices. They're in the 13th floor, number 75, Dr. Langadube Street in Durban. That's 13th floor, 75, Dr. Langadube Street in Durban. Dineo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And let me just repeat your number as well if people have any questions for you, and you can also get them in touch with Ben, I think. Dineo's number, 084 783 4636, 084 783 4636, 4636, 4636, 4636.